Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news. Fake news. Fake news.
Hello, this is Fake News, Fact and Fiction from BBC Learning English. I'm Hugo.
And I'm Sam.
In the program today, we hear from expert Samantha Bradshaw on the dangers of fake news.
And I'll be giving you some information about information.
We'll also hear a story about what happened when fake news was spread in a small town in Mexico. Now, Sam, how are you today?
I'm fine. Thanks, Hugo. How are you?
I am very well, and I'm looking forward to your vocabulary slot later.
Okay. I am today going to be talking about the word information.
I can hardly wait.
Yeah, I think that might be fake sincerity there.
No, honestly, I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, well, we'll see if you feel the same way afterwards. Here is everything you could ever want to know about the word information. Maybe not everything, but as much as I could fit in. What is information? Information is knowledge. It's facts and details about a particular subject. Grammatically, information is an uncountable noun. So we talk about bits of information or pieces of information, but not informations. Information has a number of very closely related grammatical variations. The verb to inform is quite formal and means to tell someone something. And the adjective, informative, is used to describe information that is useful and interesting. Information also appears in at least two initialisms, IT, information technology, and FYI, for your information. Information comes from sources, and there are many different sources of information, including TV, radio, newspapers, books, magazines, the internet, social media, teachers, friends, colleagues, even overheard conversations on the bus. In fact, wherever we turn, there is information of one kind or another. And not all information is useful or appropriate. So it's definitely possible to have too much information. In fact, that's a phrase we use when someone tells us something that is very personal and makes us feel a little uncomfortable. You haven't changed your underpants in a week? Ugh, too much information. Too much information is another initialism, TMI. When thinking about fake news, we should be aware that information isn't always true and not all sources of information are reliable or accurate. We need to be on the lookout for disinformation, which is false information deliberately spread, and misinformation, which is false information that is accidentally spread. Though, to be honest, these expressions are both commonly used for the same thing, fake news. I hope that wasn't TMI. Now, FYI, it's back to the studio.
Well, thanks. That was very informative.
Oh, Hugo, you're very good.
I try my best. But now, our theme of the day is the possible dangers of sharing fake news. To give us an overview, we're going to hear from Samantha Bradshaw from Oxford University. She's a researcher in fake news and disinformation at the Oxford Internet Institute.
Fake news can have real human consequences when it spreads from the online world to the offline world, particularly because of the speed at which this disinformation can spread. Often, unlike in the past, where there were many checks to the information that was being put out to the public, there aren't as many checks with social media, and viral stories containing fake news or other forms of disinformation have real-life consequences for people. For example, if we look at India or Mexico, disinformation and fake news have led to people actually being killed. If we look at the medical world with vaccines, a lot of the anti-vax movement narratives and the fake news about vaccinating children have caused real-life children not to get vaccinated and then die of sickness later. So there are real consequences to fake news and to these rumors that spread online.
So Samantha was talking a lot about consequences there.
Yes, some tragic consequences in that case. So consequences are the result of things that happen, or in the case of vaccinations, don't happen, and the result is usually bad.
Yeah, and she mentioned a story in Mexico when people were killed as a result of fake news. And I remember that because we covered that story here at the BBC. I tracked down one of the producers who worked on the story, Reha Kansara, to find out more of the details. Reha, you covered a tragic story, and that was because of fake news. Tell us about that.
So this is a story about two men who were murdered for something that they didn't do. These two men, they were going back home. They stopped over by a school to take a break. They had loud music on and were resting in their car. But someone at the school got suspicious, and so they called the police. As soon as the police arrested them, not for anything, but just finding, beer bottles, empty beer bottles in their car. People came, saw everything that was happening outside the school and started spreading fake news on WhatsApp. The rumor that essentially spread was that they were two men who were child kidnappers who were waiting outside a school to abduct children. And that obviously caused a frenzy on social media, on WhatsApp. And that turned into something bigger when they were arrested, because this went from WhatsApp to Facebook, gathered on Facebook to call out on people to come outside of the police station and basically take the law into their own hands. They were dragged from the police station to a town hall, doused in petrol, and then lit on fire. Lynchings aren't a new thing, but what is new is the way that this whole thing was filmed on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. It really shows the danger, because it went from WhatsApp to Facebook, and then it was a very small town in Mexico, so in a matter of hours, everybody was talking about it. And what struck you the most when covering the story?
The fact that people so easily believe things without, fact checking or double sourcing things. It has grave consequences, and this was one of them.
Has there been any change in terms of legislation in Mexico, like public perception, even like public behavior when they see something that is not true?
There are people talking about misinformation, more particularly over here, disinformation, the fact that people can turn lies into actual news. And this is something that Mexico is dealing with, not just with lynchings, but also with elections and just in general fake news in the country. And so you have platforms like Lo Que Sigue that has had to come about just to combat fake news in the country.
Reha, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
A terrible story, Sam.
Yeah, really, really tragic.
Yeah, and we know this has happened not just in Mexico, but in other countries as well, like in India and Myanmar.
Yeah, it just goes to show that we have to be really, really careful when we're sharing information online. And most of us only share cute cat videos probably, but there are consequences to things like gossip that are shared. It seems a little bit insensitive to talk about vocabulary after such a tragic story, but Reha did use a really interesting journalistic term there. So could you explain to us what double sourcing means, please?
So it is making sure that you have two independent sources confirming the same information. But you also have to make sure that these sources are not confirming, the news using the same source themselves.
Right.
Now, if you are an avid news consumer and want some advice on what to consider before you share anything on social media, here's Reha again with her top tip.
The best tip that I can give people who are consuming news non-stop is that you need to, if you see something, you need to find a way to verify it. That means if you see something in the news, check another media organization's coverage of that news to see whether they are following the same line. If you see something on WhatsApp that isn't news, but people are spreading, question why they're spreading it, what's their agenda. If there is something involved in it that shows that it could have a reliable source of news, then go to that source and find out what's happening.
It's a great tip then, not just for journalists, but for everybody. It's very important to verify before sharing.
Absolutely. And to verify simply means to check that something is true.
Okay, well, Almost done for today. Before we go, Sam, remind us of today's key vocabulary.
Of course, very happy to. So today I was talking about different forms of the word information. Information itself is an uncountable noun, and when it comes to fake news, you can talk about disinformation, which is deliberately fake information, and then there's also misinformation, which is accidentally fake information. So for example, if you're sharing something that you didn't know was fake, that's misinformation. But you might hear misinformation and disinformation being used interchangeably. The adjective for something that is interesting and useful is informative. In the program, we also talked about the word consequences, which are the negative results of something. And we also heard the word double sourcing, which is checking a news story is true by seeing if two independent sources are reporting the same thing. And if you do, that you may be able to verify the story and you may be able to confirm that it is indeed true.
Thank you, Sam. And that's all from us today. Share safely. Goodbye.
Bye.